not just an autumn update, but we also look at all the scenic opportunities that await us at Chadwick. Hi, welcome back to Chadwick Model Railway. I'm Charlie and this is my autumn update and a little bit of a layout tour. Now I kind of view these seasonal updates as not necessarily anything specific, but it's where I sort of catch up with all the odds and ends, let's say. And I'd want to start on one particularly boring subject which sort of caught me out at the end of September, and that is insurance. I'd always assumed that my railway was covered by my house insurance. Now, you may not know this, but my railway room is actually in a building alongside the house. It's not actually attached. So that makes it an outbuilding, whether it be a shed, you know, I don't know, detached bungalow or whatever you want, but it's in a detached building. So I'm insured with Aviva. Now, I like Aviva. I had a small flood here a couple of years ago and they paid out, no quibble. They came and had a look, new carpets and all this sort of stuff, because I live at the foot of a hill. So when there are, you know, what should we say, torrential downpours forecast, I do get a little twitchy. Hey ho, it's part of global warming and life's rich tapestry, let's say. Right, so I phoned up Aviva and said, can you just confirm that I am covered? And they said, no, you're not, because you're in a detached building, you're in an outbuilding. I said, okay, then, so what am I covered for? So you're covered in the building for the rebuild of the building plus £3,000 worth of contents. I looked around that. My computers are 3,000 quid, so nothing else. Then I had a quick count up and I may have made a mistake here, but I sort of estimated this railway to be at £15,000 in value. Now that's not to pay someone in and rebuild it, it's the scrap value. If the whole thing sort of burnt down and you had to start again, then there's some timber, you know, plywood, but not your time. So all you're going to pay for is the hardware, as it were. So you've got, you know, your wood, I don't know, the helix, the track, the locos, the rolling stock and so on. Now I sort of give it a bit of a thought and I thought, yeah, 15 grand, I'll sort that out. And got back onto them, said, yeah, I think it's 15 grand. I might up that next year because I don't think that's spot on the money, but I wasn't counting every single coach and every loco and every sound chip and everything else. So I said 15,000. And they turned around, and they being Magnet Insurance, and there's nothing in it for me if you decide to go with them at all, but I use Magnet Insurance also for our Model Railway Club exhibition days, so everyone's layouts are covered. So that's why I went to Magnet, and they quoted me for, you know, 12 months insurance, sort of a no quibble, sort of 15 grand's worth of Model Railway stuff, well, sorry, you know, contents at £89 a year. And I must confess, I was expecting something like 200. So that was a great bonus. And I'll be perfectly honest, I've taken that insurance at 89 quid. And I feel much more sort of content, really, knowing that if anything went wrong here and I lost a lot, whether it be, you know, a wiring mistake or whatever, or, you know, someone broke in or the building burnt down or whatever, that I have good, decent cover. They didn't ask about alarm systems or quality of door locks and all this sort of stuff. But if you're unsure about your house insurance, of whether it covers your layout, then give your insurance company a ring. If you're actually in the house alongside it, it might just be covered, but it is worth asking the question, and of course totaling up the replacement value of your railway world. So there we go, really. Insurance, please don't turn your back on it. 89 quid for 15 grand's worth of cover. What's 89 quid? 2 coaches, you know, maybe a second-hand loco. It's no real money when you consider the stress and the risk involved. Insurance, make sure you've got some. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I did a video on which plan I would opt for this raised freight yard area. And if you recall, I think it was 22 submissions, and we went through them. And this one here from Sean Lawless was the winner, let's say, for want of a better term. And Sean from South Africa, I said you could name it, and we've gone for a relative of his, so it's going to be Revel's Yard, quite understandably so. And then, of course, someone else says, Wouldn't have done it like that, Charlie. I would have done it like this. And a guy called, bear with me, Philip Brand from Australia turned around and said, well, actually, Charlie, if you do away with this point and install a double slip there instead, then the functionality improves in that the loco then doesn't need to run up into this line, but can do it through the double slip. So let's take a little look in AnyRail and I'll show you what he means. Now here we are in AnyRail, and this is the proposed layout from Sean Lawless. And as we saw earlier, then the train would come in here, uncouple, go into the head shunt, and if we want to get to the loco storage area, it goes through this point, through that one, down here, and then up here, through there, and then into the loco storage area. And then once the train's ready for departure and has been built in this area, it would come down and hook up. So a little bit of a palaver until we move on to the next one. And here you can see the loco would come off, and here we have the double slip instead of the 2 points. So the loco would come through, straight through this double slip up into the loco storage area, and then when required it can go straight down into this area here. It kind of makes sense, as it were. So I'll just flip back. So there's the previous with the 2 points here and here, and there's the current plan with those two there. So thanks for your help, Sean and Philip, for helping to make this the success that I'm sure it will be. Now, while I was up at the Getz show, I stumbled across a guy who was selling second-hand points, and this is a double slip for £21.50. The reason it's so cheap is one of the springs has gone. Well, as you know, I use tortoise point motors and I removed the springs, so that sort of fell straight into my lap. So that will be the one that we pop into that area, so we can get on and build this. But that's not quite true, because before we can build this yard, we need to sort out the retaining wall, which isn't as straightforward as you might think. Now, my retaining wall situation is that there's the tunnel mouth as both lines disappear off into the helix under this hillside, and obviously I've got a bit more work to do with the hillside, and then the tracks come up to the normal sort of level, and obviously I've got a couple of bits of cardboard in there, and then we've got to come around here and I've got to sort out some kind of tunnel mouth, and I have a plan around that. But of course the railways would only want to excavate the minimum amount of soil, because at the end of the day they've got to use it on an embankment or whatever, and the last thing they want to do is use it for landfill. But what am I going to make my retaining wall out of, and also from what design, what sort of prototypical examples are there around? Now, a week or so ago I was working in Taunton, and when I pulled up at some traffic lights I noticed this retaining wall as it leads up to a bridge by the railway. And as you can see, the lower part of the wall is made from shaped stone, whereas the upper part, where it turns more vertical, is made from engineer's brick. Now, you may be aware that engineer's brick is particularly strong, and it's used to reinforce certain areas of high stress railway buildings, let's say. So there is that example, but then someone else got on to, well, a couple of guys actually, both Jim and Ed, and said in Yeovil behind the B&M store there's the old GWR railway line. Have I had a look at that wall? So as quick as a flash, Margaret and I, on our way back from Weymouth, popped in there to this B&M store. I went around the back and blow me down, there's this lovely big wall. And as you can see, it appears to be made from a mix of engineer's brick and standard red brick, but I don't think that's the case. Now, the longer of the sides of the brick is known as the stretcher, and the end is known as the header. And it appears here that all the headers are made from engineer's brick, but I don't believe that's true. I think it's just the way these bricks have been fired. But as you can see, the wall is probably one set of bricks thick, and they've just done it by a row of stretchers followed by a row of headers as it works its way up the construction. The angle isn't that vertical really, as you can see here. Now the angles of retaining walls is based upon what the soil it's holding back. Now if it's sand, then clearly the retaining walls would have to be at a very sharp, a very acute angle. Whereas if it's a rock formation, then they tend to be more vertical. So depending on the soil structure, depends on the angle of the retaining wall. Now let's get back to my world, of course. So what am I going to do here? Now in the past I've used various types of material for my retaining walls, and this is a very flimsy plastic, and I'm unsure who this was made by. And around by the viaduct area there's also a retaining wall, and this is your Metcalf type card kits. And then going up towards the branch station and also down towards the Helix, we have these foam type boards which are quite durable. You can bend them with a heat source such as a hairdryer, and I think these are made by Woodland Scenisc, but they are very effective. So there are obviously lots of choices, including various sort of card options and of course the plastic card type options. But I'm tending to lean towards the example from Taunton, whereas you've got the bottom section of the retaining wall in a stone, and then a brick type affair above that, and then you'd have the line would then run parallel and would add sort of a bit more interest rather than have some sort of plain drab solid feature. Now over the year, other YouTubers, you know, who are trying to start a channel and trying to find their way, have asked me if I could put together a YouTuber's course, or I could offer advice or whatever. And I think I hinted at this back on the 200th video in the summer. Well, to that end, I've booked the Davis Hall, which is where we hold our model railway shows. It's the Davis Hall in West Camel near Yeovil. Postcode is BA22 7QX. It's a nice looking hall. It's a pretty decent sort of place really. And I've booked Sunday the 21st of January 2024 from 10 AM until perhaps 3 PM. I'm going to try to provide lunch. There's adequate parking and all that stuff there. But who's this sort of course aimed at? Well, it's people who have a couple of videos and can't seem to get the growth, or they're stagnated perhaps. It's not aimed at people with kind of 800 to 1,000 subscribers, because clearly you found your way and you're sort of moving on. But if you're new to YouTube, you don't really understand how it works, you know, how the click-through rates work, and things about watch time and subscribers, comments, and how we deal with all these sort of things, then this could be the sort of course for you. So clearly I have expenses of lunch and booking the hall and this sort of stuff, so I'm aiming at around about £50 per person for the 5 hours, and we're kind of looking at sort of 10 to 15 people to attend. So I know some people have already made their interest known to me by emailing me at chadwickmodelrailway@gmail.com, and if you can put in the title line YouTuber's course, then it'll make it easier for me. If you are one of those people, if you could come back and say, yes Charlie, I'm good to go on those dates, then that'd be great. But I'm going to cap it at, I'm pretty sure I'm going to cap it at 15 people. If there's more interest, then perhaps we'll sort a date out later in the year. And if there are fewer people, well, we'll just more cozy, won't it? Right, YouTuber's course then, 21st of January in the Davis Hall, West Camel near Yeovil, BA22 7QX. Right, onward. Now, it would be wrong of me to try to mislead you into the fact that Chadwick works perfectly well all the time, every day, because clearly that's not the case. I mean, you see my derailments and other sort of mistakes, let's say. But sadly, a few weeks ago, I came down and turned my layout on and it never worked. And this item here, which is a Digitrax DCS 240, decided, what should we say, not to work anymore. I put it on a tester, and it can't be viewed. You can't do a firmware upgrade. The software doesn't recognize it. The only thing to do are two things. You can either send it back to Digitrax or chuck it in the bin. Now, as much as I like to send it straight back to Digitrax, there's something like a 2 to 3 month turnaround time. So I couldn't bear that. So I went on the internet and I bought a replacement DCS 240, popped it in its place, turned the layout on, and then realised something was amiss. All these components are connected on something called LocoNet, and you have the point controllers, the feedback circuits, the reverse loop modules. All these things talk on a system called LocoNet, which is basically a data transfer network. Now, in this world, there are three major components. There is your computer control system, which is either train controller, iTrain, or JMRI. And then you have your control system, which might be Digitrax or Lens or ESU, these kind of things. And then you have the computer, which might, well, with train control, it's always going to be a PC, but I believe with iTrain, it can be a PC or a fruit-based system. Anyway, I then went down the avenue that actually it could be something to do with Windows. So I've tried my train controller system with Windows 10 and Windows 11 on different computers. I've also tried Train Controller 9 and Train Controller 10. The problem is there throughout. Whichever system you use, it's exactly the same. So what's happened is when this DCS 240 went down, with it, it's taken some other components. And of course the problem is when it's taken more than one component, it's trying to find, let's say, which two that it's taken with it. I mean, earlier today I swapped out this thing here, which is a DCS, no it isn't, it's a DS64 point controller for a DS74, the new point controller. I popped the new one in its place and it hasn't got rid of the snag, it's exactly the same. I then moved around the layout to another one of these and I pulled out the 12-volt supply. Not only did it trip both trips in this room, but it actually cut the house out. So it's quite bizarre what's going on, but there is something in here somewhere, and it's not a wiring issue, it's a component issue, you know, that's upsetting the LocoNet feed. But it's only engineering, and give me a few weeks and I will sort it out. But what I do is I spend a day sorting it out, come to a few dead ends, sleep on it, try something else. But I still maintain my layout, and to that end I need to show you now my purchases that have taken place in recent months. I'm over in the area of the branch line station. A couple of purchases have been made. This is the old Airfix, now the Dapol platform roof. Well, I was up in Chester a few weeks ago and I went into a little shop there and I bought another 3 or 4 of those to go along that platform, and they will look smashing. It's quite an old mould, but it does the job. And then for this area here, remember this board isn't fixed, there's another siding has got to come off here and go to an industry, and I sort of vainly said it'll be something like Bishop's Biscuits, so we needed some kind of a biscuit factory. And what do you need to build biscuits? Well, the first thing you need is milk, so I invested in 3 Dapol milk tankers. Hopefully the wheels will be okay, because I'm not a lover of Dapol wheel sets anyway. And also I need some grain to come in, and whilst it gets, I bought this little Bachmann grain wagon, so I need another couple of those to go with that, and that will make up 2 triplets to help feed into Bishop's Biscuits. And that's the main sort of stay of this place. I haven't bought a great deal more, but I am in the market of looking for suitable buildings and the like to go in here. In the future, I've obviously got to purchase a signal, excuse me while I use a pointer, which goes over here, and that needs to be a twin signal with 3 aspects, and I think the only one who makes those is Absolute Aspects. Someone mentioned seeing this before. It's a piece of wood, get away, with a track rubber, what do you call it, glued using a hot glue gun onto the end. And this is what I use to clean my track on the approaches to the Helix and underneath the viaduct, because there's very, very little clearance. And yesterday I cleaned the whole of the track around the bottom section of the fiddle yard, and I tend to clean my track round about the 1st of the month, because if you don't have a routine, it never gets done. The only time you clean your track is when it gets filthy, dirty and nothing runs anymore. So by trying to do it once a month, I try to keep on top of it, and it seems to be working. But the track underneath the viaduct with a very narrow approach, let's say, this is a godsend. You know, quite a simple thing, bit of wood and a track rubber stuck on the end. Right, let's get over there and see what else I've bought. Now, my major purchase this year, well, sorry, excluding the replacement Digitrax box, was a Accurascale Class 37 green with full yellow ends and a split head code, and sound fitted with ESU Locksound version 5 and Crew. And guess what? I still haven't had it. It must be the last locomotive on that ship to be unloaded. Accurascale, will you please give me my loco? I paid for it in full many months ago, and I only buy one new loco a year, and that was the one. The trouble is, when you have to wait so long, it does kind of put me off the Class 31 that I want and the Class 50, both of which I paid deposits, but I won't be paying in full until, you know, prior to dispatch of them. But Accurascale, I want those bits. I need to do the review, and I want them on a new train, because I bought a complete new rake of wagons to go with it, and that will make a smashing video, and, you know, will lead to, I don't know, more people getting into those kind of trains, let's say. One other thing, I didn't mean to mislead you earlier when I said that my Digitrax system was completely down with train control and that blah. It isn't down. I can still run trains, but I can't control them via the decoders, you know, by switching through train controller and that sort of thing. And if you're thinking that I've had a power surge, which has caused all this problem in the first place, I'm afraid you're mistaken, because I have surge protection on each of my outlets. So that's why it's so much of a mystery. Right, let's go on a little layout tour and talk you through my projects over the next probably 12 months and see if there's an order of preference of which you'd like me to address them. Now, starting off at one end of the layout, we've got the branch line area, and we have it's basically made up of 3 boards. So you've got the branch line, station and goods area, you've got the industry, and you've got the branch line approach. So what do we need to do first? Well, this is the major piece of work to be done, sort of thing, and fortunately it's modular, so I can take that board out of the way, I can get this one out and sort out the buildings, the platforms, the ballasting, and get all that done, and then refit it, and then just drop those small connecting tracks back in, and all the wiring is just on sort of snap connectors, so that should all work. So that is the major evolution in this area. The industry will obviously be completed last. There is 2 lines and a point to go in, so it's no real big shakes. I don't really consider this as a major evolution in the sort of preparation of the railway. So this will be done in due course, let's say, but this board needs to be done, and the station approach. Now, as you can see, I've got a fascia on the front of the viaduct board, and now here, of course, we've got nothing but exposed cabling and everything else, so we need to figure out a way of covering this up. And what I'm going to use is this flexible type MDF board. It's, what is it, a 4 foot by 2 foot sheet, I imagine, and as you can see, it's got grooves cut in it to give it its sort of flexibility. And if I just whiz it around the other way, and then once it's cut to size, it has the flex then, obviously, to follow the contours right around the shape of this board. But to what level? Well, it'll probably come down to round about this level here. Whether it's removable, I'm not too sure. I think we'll just bring blocks out and then pop screws in and paint it black. And if it does need to come off, well, I can see where the screws are. But it's a very simple method, really, of boarding off your layout, especially if you've got curves. So where do I get this from? It's £25 a sheet from Wix. And you can see where we've used it before in shaping around this sort of cover on the Helix, but around this area here where it blends out onto the top of the Helix, obviously that's going to be a very difficult thing to shape, but with this board I think it will work out quite well. I really can't think of an easier way of doing it. The back of the TMD hillside is also an ideal candidate for the flexible MDF. So now we get onto the main station area, which is Chadwick Parkway, and like many stations, and one that I've visited many times in Totnes down in Devon, it has the two centre lines, a fast up and a fast down as it were, and then a track on either side feeding the platforms. That way I can hold a goods train on the centre line whilst the passenger train pulls up and goes on, or similarly I can put a goods train on the platform while an express goes through. So it leads to more playability. It's not just another train trundling around time after time seeing the same old train. It gives you or the operator something to do. It's not just about, you know, watching the same, I don't know, goods train trundling around, you know, hour after hour, one in one direction, one in another. So it's a playability that I'm interested in. We've also got this bay platform which can do a shuttle there with the branch line station. So what do we need to do here to develop this area? Well, clearly these bits of old Hornby platform are just placeholders. They're just there so I can get a feel for it and the length. The platform needs to hold a loco plus 6 coaches. Anything like that, the 8 coach normal ones would just go straight through, and the same with the HST. What is fundamental is that the length of my trains, where you will stop here at the signals and they must be clear the other end at those points, because obviously we can't foul those points because then the other trains can't come through. We also need to think about roads and how a road will feed into this section, whether it comes into here to a small industrial estate, roads that would come on to get passengers into the station, and roads to go on then over towards the other side and up towards the new freight yard. At the back here we've got the line that goes up, a single line to go up to the freight yard station, so we need to think about the retaining wall and embankments that have got to be built up against here. Over in the far corner there we have a new addition, a signal built box that was scratch built by a friend of mine, and he asked me if I wanted it, and I kind of paid him for it and bit his hand off. Needs a little bit of modification there, but it will fit in quite nicely. And now coming out of the west side of the station, the 4 tracks eventually merge into 2, and we've got the potential to build a nice farm scene over here with a connecting bridge to join the farm section here across to perhaps more open countryside over there. As we swing around further, we've got a little placeholder girder bridge there, and when I figured it out I shall bring the river underneath there with a decent piece of ground cover and a sort of a plate bridge to cross the river, and then the 2 tracks will then make their way on towards both the TMD and down towards the Helix. Now moving on to the TMD board, on the right hand side there you can see the provisional sort of placeholder for a bulk fuel installation and a set of tankers alongside it. The 47 that's parked up on one of those 2 lines is actually, these are the lines that feed both the fuel unit, and there's one that goes right around and that makes its way off into the reverse loops, as we can see it heading on into that hillside. Alongside it is the head shunt that belongs to the bulk fuel installation. Getting back to the TMD proper, there's obviously a great deal of work to be carried out here. As the tracks fan out, I've got to sort out the buildings, tracks that need to go into the far loco shed, and lots of infrastructure and detail that's required, along with administrative type buildings. And then turning full circle, we're back to the new freight yard with trains that would come across the placeholder girder bridge into the new main freight yard area. Another thing to be considered, of course, is where the pieces of Celotex are. We now need to get a road that will rise up behind the other side of those bulk fuel tanks across the Celotex sort of placeholders and then up into the freight yard. So that's a quick summary really, isn't it? So apart from the branch line station, the station approach, the station industry, the main platform arrangements in Chadwick Parkway, and of course the road structure that goes with it. Then there's the farm area, the incline that goes to the new freight yard, there's the river section, then there's the TMD with the bulk fuel installation. So apart from all those bits, it's nearly finished. In all honesty though, the first thing to finish now, or to get to grips with, is that retaining wall. Once the retaining wall can be sorted out, then I can go on and build the freight yard. Once the freight yard track is sorted, I can link it up with the incline that comes out from by that signal box by the station, and we can have all our track work in and finished, with a tiny exception of the industry over at the Bishop's Biscuits over at the industry by the branch line station. So everything would be done and functional bar that little bit, which is no big shakes really. And then of course my focus changes, and I'm not going to go and sort of ballast the whole layout for sort of 2.5 weeks, you know, just drive me nuts. So now's the time to take one of those segments on at a time, you know, over a month's period, is to finish the branch line station, or to finish the TMD, or to do the river scene, and take on one scenic section at a time. So if you have an opinion on which scenic section you'd like me to tackle first, perhaps you'll leave a comment down in the comment section, and if you enjoyed the video, perhaps with a thumbs up. Storm Kieran is around the corner now. It's the 1st of November, so hopefully we'll survive, but only time will tell. I always worry about floods, as I mentioned earlier about the insurance sort of situation, let's say. Anyway, I need to get on, get this edited and get it out to you. So the last thing to do really is to thank the patrons, and if you'd like to be one, there's the button. Remember, patrons get it 24 hours before everyone else, and there are no advertisements. There's the button to become a subscriber, and a video here and here. And I'll see you, all being well, in 2 weeks' time. Thanks a lot, take care. Bye-bye.